Mahir Zeynalov is a Turkish journalist based in Washington, D.C. Mahir reports back to Turkey for his English language daily called Today's Zaman. He is also a columnist with the Dubai-based Al Arabiya TV network and blogs for the Huffington Post, I believe. Yes. Mahir began his journalism career with the LA Times. Earlier this year, he was charged by President Erdogan over his writing and tweets about the corruption scandal and deported from Turkey. So briefly there. And we have Congressman Keating, as everyone knows, and he's spoken with, I guess, already, who was elected to the U.S. House of Representatives in November of 2010, one of only 9 Democratic members to be elected to the 112th Congress. He represents the 9th Congressional District, which comprises the South Shore, the South Coast, Cape Cod, Martha's Vineyard, and Nantucket. During Congressman Keating's first 2 years, he established himself as a hardworking civil servant, an advocate for the people of Massachusetts, a reputation he has held since his days in the state legislature. His priorities reflect a keen understanding of the issues facing his constituents and a commitment to addressing them. Among them are working to create jobs by supporting small businesses and increasing educational opportunities, strengthening our middle-class families, improving domestic security, and providing our senior population with needed resources, along with benefits for veterans and protecting our unique ecosystem. The Congressman is a member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee. He is also the leading voice in promoting information sharing following the Boston Marathon bombings. And he has facilitated the Homeland Security Committee's review into the Terrorist Act. He traveled to Russia in the wake of the attacks to investigate intelligence lapses that may have occurred. His other achievements include renewing the national focus on perimeter security at our nation's airports, an issue on which he is the leading voice, and introducing first-of-its-kind legislation aimed at curbing the growing prescription drug epidemic by requiring the pharma companies to make these medicines tamper-resistant.
Thank you.
And there we go. We'll get started.
Great.
Please go ahead.
What you learn in politics is when you're with a journalist, always let the journalists go first, because they're going to end up having the last word anyways, at least in our country. So
Yeah,
I'm honored to have you here and really appreciate what you've done, and certainly would like to hear from you first.
Thank you. When I was being taught like how to make interviews, just they're telling us, just keep silent. Just he or she will just talk, and then you'll get like more. If you interrupt him or her, he'll just stop, so you'll get like less. So that was my strategy. But anyway, so it's failed. Hello everyone, Mr. Congressman. Thank you very much for inviting me. I came all the way from Washington, D.C., which is a very nice environment for journalists who are covering mostly foreign policy issues like me. Of course, it's been a challenging time for me, not only for me, for thousands of people who have actually have to go through all these troubles in Turkey in the past year because of the what many call as a growing authoritarianism of the Turkish government, which is also confirmed thanks to Senator John McCain by the Turkish U.S. Ambassador to Turkey, John Bass, who confirmed that there's an authoritarian drift in Turkey. So it's unfortunate, of course, we're watching how this beautiful country that I love so much being destroyed before our own eyes. So we cannot, of course, call him. I want to avoid to describe him, the president, as someone who possesses, like a dictator or authoritarian. But there's something in the making, and we can actually see this through a variety of his actions in the past, maybe since the summer protests that rocked Turkey, and you may know all about that. 15 years ago, so I just want to portray you the tremendous change he has gone. 15 years ago, in 1998, President Erdogan, then he was just a politician in Istanbul, he recited a modified version of poem, which actually deemed very problematic by judiciary, then under a huge influence of once powerful Turkish military, and he was jailed. He was charged for inciting public animosity, inciting animosity among the public, and he went to jail. And he actually used the same Turkish Penal Code article that landed him in jail 15 years ago to charge me. It was New Year's Eve, and that was a gift from him. A colleague of mine, I was just in the newsroom, just came to me and said, is that true? I said, what's true? He said, like, the prime minister, he was the prime minister then, he sued you. I said, like, for what? I mean, doesn't he have anything to do, like, running the country? Why? He is obsessed with journalists. When he was actually jailed 15 years ago, outspoken and critical mainstream newspaper called Hürriyet ran a headline, said that he cannot even be a village head. And then he became a prime minister and now president. He's so much personally obsessed with that, and he just kept reiterating these, like headline all the time. He knows how powerful it is. And during that time, his government, his party, was overthrown thanks to a series of headlines that been published by critical media outlets. So he understands how powerful media is and how it can be powerful. And I think this theory is correct that if you control TV networks of any country, the country is yours. The entire country is yours. And in Turkey, unfortunately, there are 5 million readers of newspapers, and one of the fifth are reading actually my newspaper is selling over 1 million copies a day, and but people don't exchange newspapers, so they just subscribe to one newspaper and read it, so become loyal to that. But whenever you get the remote control, you change the TV channels, and then you can actually watch to other TV channels too. But the problem in Turkey is that you don't have any independent or critical TV channels, only marginal ones. And people, and the entire Turkish society, are just watching them. And whenever you control the TV networks, and they're the one was so successful in the past 5 or 6 years, to actually literally seize them through different means, and I will just briefly talk about them in a minute. So he's, as I said, he's personally obsessed with that, and in the 15 years, he's just doing whatever has been done to him. So the population or the conservative base he's representing were oppressed for decades. They and now whenever they come to the power, their struggle, now it seems, was not really to actually bring a liberal democratic system in Turkey, but actually to have more power. And whenever they try to join the European Union, which helped Turkey limit the role of military in politics, and also reform judiciary in line with European standards, so it seemed that they actually trying to limit the power of the authority of those hostile powers within the country, so that they can have more power. Whenever they got more power, they just wanted more and more and more, and they got it. Because they also had many social programs. They have gone through privatization program in the past decade, and they got that cash, and they invested heavily, and also stole something. So people just didn't see them. Because they control the media right now, so especially the TV networks, so it was very easy for them to shape the public opinion. And Erdogan has that characteristic that he actually goes after his opponents to the last minute. So it's not that if you are in a war, so there's a front line, and if you just contain your adversary, that's it. It's not that. He's just going after them until the adversary is just finished. And so whenever he actually pressed charges on me, I thought I'm gonna pay several like some thousands of dollars, but it was a prison. Actually, he was demanding a prison. And then he wanted to jail me. The Istanbul chief public prosecutor resisted, and they talked to my president. And by the way, I'm a citizen of Azerbaijan, so I was a foreign journalist, but I was married to a Turkish national, so I was something equivalent to someone who holds actual green card here. So they talked to my president. The president refused, and then they had to deport me. And I remember he was leaving for Germany. There was a friend of mine sitting right there in front of him, and he asked a question, a critical question, a rare occurrence in Turkish media, and Erdogan was so angry, and he said that, I know your bosses, and that was, very nasty answer, and I was very angry. He was just lashing at my friend, and I just went to the Twitter. I said that Turkish public has never seen such an evil leader in its history, and they again, pressed charges against me for this, and they started the procedure. And someone from the Interior Ministry, someone who was sympathetic to me, called our newspaper and said that, they're just after you. And I went into hiding because they would just jail me for several weeks, and then it would be, and then I have a wife, family, of course, they were worried about me. They would just, write to my country and see, if I'm their country and if they accept me. And so I just to avoid that, I just went into hiding for 3 days. Of course, they were just looking after me, and then I went and surrendered to police, airport police, and they just deported me. And I went back to my country. There was a huge media waiting for me, of course, how many other journalists I think deported, so I went there. It was a huge, from CNN to BBC, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, all just emailing me, calling me, just trying to understand what was that tweet that, that Erdogan was so angry that, so no one, even I didn't know that. I didn't know that was the reason. And most of the people thought that, that was a tweet that they actually pressed charges on me a month ago. And then he went to the parliament, Erdogan, it was in February, and he called me a liar. He said that he claims that, referring to me, he claims that, we deported him. But we did not. He's a liar. And you know what? He said, these people lie a lot, referring to the, those who are thinking critically. These people just lie a lot and then just emit the, cheering applause of the lawmakers and those who don't like me. It was such a, terrible thing, because just imagine that you are, just a reporter. And then, of course, if you're a politician and you know this better, you actually learn this, just how to digest that criticism. You know that there will be people protesting, there will be people who are just writing nasty emails saying that, because of you, this happened, you failed in that. But if you're a reporter, no one just protesting. Maybe your editor or some of the readers just saying that, why are you not covering this? But whenever you're a reporter, whenever you don't expect such things, but your government, the Turkish government, if they don't like you or your reporting, they just use that lynch culture that's there to defame you and make you infamous overnight. So we had let's say a BBC journalist, Selin Girit, who had several hundred, followers on Twitter. No one knew her. She was just junior reporter, and she just made a tweet, and the Ankara mayor made her famous overnight. He has nearly 1 million followers. He just said that this woman just working for Britain. And the next day, the entire Turkish media, the programmatic media, they just ran headlines that she's an English agent now working for Israel. Or in another case, Amberin Zaman, a good friend of mine, the economist reporter, she made a remark which I don't agree, by the way. And then Erdogan the next day, he just went before the hundreds of thousands of people. Just he just said that you shameless woman, you got your pen in your hands and you think that you are a journalist, you are a militant under the guise of a journalism. He said that to a woman, and he just said, such an immoral woman, he said, just before hundreds of thousands of people, and people cheered, of course. So these kind of examples are awash in that country, because he's very popular and he's using that power to lynch journalists. This is not the only way. He's actually charging the businessman. For example, let's say he's just saying that I will just give you that tender, that public tender, and you're gonna give me, let's say, 100 million out of $5 billion, let's say state tender, and then he's creating a pool, a money pool. And then forcing troubled newspapers or the TV networks, so that they will just buy these networks or the newspapers. So in Turkey we call them as a pool media. So those media, the programmatic media, were actually writing about just trying to polishing government, like publishing government should not, if it's not a problem, they're just so ruthless in their reporting that they're just writing stories that are unbelievable. If they have their own target and the entire media all day, several days, just writing against them. So this is the situation in Turkey, the media situation. Dismissal of journalists, and 981 journalists were dismissed until June. So that makes like 5 journalists every day. That's a recent report by a labor organization called DIS released. And also there are 56 journalists who were forced to resign. And of course, there's only one case of deportation, which is me, and I'm happy to hold that title, and I hope I will be the last one. But of course, whenever he deported me, the opposition leader said, will not be able to tweet. Of course he is going to tweet. And I continued tweeting, and actually they just went crazy because they said that, why are you writing about our country? Because they don't understand that the role of journalists is just to report. They don't understand why I'm writing that. They don't understand. They keep asking me this every day. Whenever I just write something or tweet something, there are comments beside it. Why are you writing about this? So they don't understand that. So there's that culture which we should tackle. And so there are worrying trends. The Freedom House ranked Turkey as not free in this year's Media Freedom Index. And many international press advocacy bodies actually ranked Turkey in 150, 60s in the ranking. So this is very worrying. This is troublesome. And is there any hope? I don't see in the foreseeable future. I don't think that in the next couple of years, unless this government falls or just goes away or loses elections, which is unlikely, that there could be any kind of improvement. The carrot is big, and also stick is also big, and he is using both these methods to intimidate journalists or just give them carrot so that they can write stories that are pro-government. So, do we need brave journalists? Yes, we have some here. I know some cases, but it's not enough, and you cannot get result there, because as I said, if you write anything, and if the government decides that you should be mitigated, eliminated, the media is very much professional in that, and they will just do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that story. And I think the question is, why is your story so important? And it's important here. If you look out the window and you look around the city of Boston and the history of our country here, and we have a democracy, and we have had bumps in the road here in our country, but part of what we had from the inception days is the ability of people to speak up, and they fought hard and they lost their lives to do that. And although someone that's in government, all the reporters don't always write great things about me, and so it's interesting to be here and to say how proud I am of your courage in going forward to speak the truth to power. And we are important. Now, why is that important to us here? It's important in the beginning, I think, to realize that we, on the very core issues of Turkey or any country, it's not our place to meddle in those affairs. When it comes to ethnic issues and religious issues and other issues, it'll be up to the Turks to settle those issues themselves. Why do we, for instance, have a hearing, as we did in the committee that I'm the ranking member of in July, about democracy in Turkey? Because Turkey is important to the world, and it's important to us. And there's, until recently, been such hope there. It was a country, a growing democracy, and a growing economy, where it was ranked, and still is, I think, 17th in the world in terms of its economic activity. And its location, it's a very hard location. There's a lot going on all around the borders in the region. But Turkey has been an ally of the United States. Turkey has been there in times of crisis with the United States, and it's an important relationship. But to be successful going forward, and it's the reason why we had a hearing in Washington on this, entitled, Democracy in Turkey, and that was the theme of it, and what's going on. Because there are some troubling aspects in terms of the strength, the inner strength of a very important country. And one of them deals with what happens when there isn't a freedom of expression and an inability to have social engagement in a country. Because that's integral to a free country and a democratic country. When the press cannot communicate without threat of going to jail or worse, that will begin to destroy any democracy. When we have the inability to communicate that, even in today's world, with the social media, that is a great concern. Because as we've seen going all around the world, in much more severe situations, it's the social media sometimes where the people of that particular country will be able to speak up and share what's going on and become more transparent and bring that message to the world. When that is shut off, it's a real problem, and it's a huge red flag issue. That's why I co-sponsored a resolution dealing with the issue of Turkey's cutting down the ability of people to have freedom of expression through the social media in particular. When a press cannot tell the public what's going on, there's great doubt there. And it also is a climate. One of the greatest checks and balances we have in a democracy is the freedom of expression, the freedom to assemble together, to make your voice be heard collectively, whether it's a protest, and we have these all the time. And it's just one more signal of a democratic culture in a democratic country. This step backwards is not only a concern democratically, but my belief, and I've discussed this with Burhan and others, one of the strong issues surrounding Turkey has been its ability to move economically. And this was, I think, viewed in the world as a country where they would be able to show that democracy works, and as a result, the economy will flourish. People's own personal income, their own ability to be successful in their lives for their sons and daughters will be successful too. And so as you look at what's happening, it's more than just an issue of one journalist, or now, how many a day is it?
5.
5 a day being pushed away, which is pretty deeply concerning. It's beyond that, because that's just one more symptom of a problem. And the reason we would have a hearing, the reason it's an issue here is because of the importance of Turkey, and how it has such a strategic role in the world. And that's the self-interest of, I think, most free countries as well. Turkey has had to deal with a very, very difficult refugee problem. It has to deal with borders that now terrorists go back and forth in sections. There's internal threats to the country by terrorist groups. And in order to be successful, it must be strong from within. And if you have very troubling stories about not allowing the kind of basic freedoms that are there in any democracy, concerning stories about a judiciary where a rule of law isn't separate and consistent, where it's rather under the control of the powerful, that's a serious problem going forward. It's not only a serious problem in terms of the threats of the world there. But it's also a serious problem in terms of its economic future. Because without a rule of law, without certainty that there's freedom of speech, and that if someone does something wrong or illegally on your business, there won't be investments, and there won't be continued growth. And without that, the whole country suffers. And if Turkey suffers, I think it's a bad situation for so many other countries in the world. So we're concerned when we hear about corruption that can't be reported, or if it is brought to light, the response hasn't been investigated. Let's see what's happened, and if something's gone wrong and if something's illegal, the judiciary will take care of that in an even-handed, rule of law manner. And there's something wrong when that judiciary is used to threaten free speech, free expression, and free assembly. So there's all kinds of concerns. And when you hear the people talk about the entire region of the world, so many experts in our country and from outside our country will say Turkey is integral to try and have success and move forward in a democratic manner in that whole region. That's why we have a hearing, not because we want to meddle and solve everyone's problems, but because we know that the success of Turkey is so important to the success of so many other areas of the world, not just in that region, but in a much broader sense. So it's with deep concern when you hear stories of the press not being able to, not only not being able to speak, but to be threatened. It's a very serious concern. And we'll continue to speak up about those areas as we speak up in our own country when we see things occur here. It keeps us strong from within, and it keeps us, I think, in a position where we can work with other countries that deal the same way. So I think that your story is a courageous one, but it's an important one. And it's one that's just not a story about one journalist speaking up, but of a much broader issue of democratic freedoms being threatened.
I now open the floor for a Q&A session. Please introduce yourself, then you may proceed with your question.
My name is Bülent Kızıltan. I'm a scientist at Harvard University. Thank you both of you for addressing us here today, giving us the opportunity to ask some questions. As Mr. Zeynalov said, the government in Turkey is not very open to criticism, and they would bully anybody who seemed to be a small fish in the pond. So I would like to ask the Congressman about that hearing, which might have not been perceived as positively by the Turkish government or bureaucrats. Did you have any personal interaction with any bureaucrat or a politician counterpart on Turkey, and did any of that aggression leaked to you when you had that hearing?
Well, we were told that we shouldn't have a hearing.
You shouldn't have a hearing.
By representatives of the government.
Wow.
We were told they didn't like the title of the hearing. And it was very strongly said that we shouldn't. And I was a little surprised with that because number one, we couldn't go to Turkey and say, don't have a hearing on this. It's within a country's rights to do that. And I was surprised with that reaction. And I said, well, what are your concerns? Well, your concerns were you're having the hearing. You shouldn't have a hearing with that title. And it didn't even deal with what was being said. And it didn't even matter that I was giving great assurances that this is not an opportunity to take a big stick to a country. This is we do this to our own country and with our own issues. You could go to all the hearings and or you could turn on the television, or you could go through the social media and listen to the journalists every day in the news, and you will hear how in a democracy we're speaking up against our government, whether it's the IRS, whether it's the Secret Service, whether it's the military, whether it's Congress. Every day, I don't think there is a day in this country where you can't get 5 minutes into the news and see that being. So it was a surprise, that reaction, and it actually reinforced the fact that why we should have a hearing. Absolutely. Ironically, and we made it clear in that hearing when we heard from business people that were concerned, and people telling us what was going on in terms of trying to speak up, and how there were concerns on the way the government was reacting to people speaking up in a crowd, or speaking up individually, or journalists speaking up themselves. And all we did was become informed more in an open setting as to what was happening, where both sides could have the opportunity to make any comments the way we do. And at the hearing, I think at the end, I personally reassured, this is a hearing who's here. We're here because we want to see continued progress, and we're concerned because we do business, and there's a huge diaspora here in the United States of people from Turkey that are concerned, and we have our own concerns because of all the threats that surround you as to whether we would have the ability to act in a democratic fashion. So we did rehash the fact that there was such great hope around the world. Turkey was going to be the shining example going forward, and there have been changes. And Erdogan has reacted in many ways in areas that raise great concern. And they should be told to the rest of the world. And we do that in our hearings, because many of our things are broadcast all through the world in that respect. So it's an interesting question you had. It wasn't a good reaction, and the request was cancel the hearing. That gave us more reason to have it.
I have actually a follow-up question, the last things that you mentioned. So there are a lot of pressure on the media, especially on journalists in Turkey, particularly in Turkey. And what would be the approach or your reaction against those pressure, violence on the journalists as a democratic country? And how would you express it to the world besides your issues and normal hearings?
Well, I think once a people experience democracy and the freedom that surrounds that, it's very seldom that people will go back. You can delay it with your actions. You can try and stop things from happening. But I don't think you're ever successful by trying to react to that by saying, if anyone speaks up, we're going to deport that journalist, or we're going to find if they broke the law, reporting what they're doing. Or if they assemble outside and protest because of an environmental issue or any other issue. They're not the enemy, they're our people, and they have a voice. And time again, once there is a democratic basis that exists, and there is the beginnings of freedom, you can't put that genie back into the bottle. You can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. It's already out. And you will see that it's only a matter of time until things change. Journalists will continue to speak up. People will continue to assemble. And when people realize that this is the wrong approach for the benefit of so many of the people, that it's having a tangible effect on your jobs and economy and the way you live, they will react. Now the question is, I think with many people that take more of an autocratic approach, well, I'm just worried about getting through tomorrow or next week, and that holds the country back too. So the answer is, it will happen. It'll happen by itself. It won't happen because any other country is meddling. It won't happen because we have a hearing. It'll happen from within, and it'll be the people themselves that will prove to be successful in that. And in this instance, where Turkey has already had, that taste of freedom and democracy, and that success, it'll happen. And so many times there's violence or there's economic loss, there's some persecution. Sometimes there's jail time when people take that reaction that they can think they can control it and push back at it. It doesn't work.
My name is Cafer Özdemir. I'm a researcher at Harvard Medical School. Thank you for the nice talks. I have one question for Mr. Zeynalov. So when, as Erdogan polarizes the whole country, the people in the opposite poles cannot really talk to each other. I cannot even convince my family members that Erdogan is not a good leader for Turkey, but pro-Erdogan citizens think that he's a good-hearted national hero, and anything who criticizes him is just a spy or someone who doesn't like Turkey to progress. So, as you said, if AKP government keeps winning the elections, you don't see any hope, as we cannot convince and even talk to people. So, shall we just wait to Turkey go like collapse in economy or something? What's your
Right. I was actually having a conversation with my colleague a few hours ago, and we just actually discussed what we can do to actually struggle and fight against the regime. And I don't know. I mean, I don't see hope just because I don't see any way how to do it because they are so powerful. And you mentioned it correctly that in Turkey the biggest problem is the polarization of the society, and the hatred is so deep in the society that in the past you had the opposition. There were fault lines. There were like secular people, there were Kurdish people, and the conservative people, and they formed their political factions around these identities. Today we have the conservative base just cut into two or into three, and they're just fighting each other. For example, say my wife's family are supporting the government, and Turkish media and international media actually wanted to talk to them for several times. They just requested and they rejected it. And their daughter was being deported by the government, but they don't want to talk to the media because they support the government. So they're conservative people, but still, so this is an epitome, a symbol of how the society is divided and how it's very much harmful. When you fight, you're just fighting. You should fight against your own family. So this is the problem. So whenever I say something, they just calling me a traitor because they believe that I'm actually working against my country or against the people that are my family or friends. So this is the problem. So it's not that the government is against the media. So it's not a clear cut. It's not the Saddam Hussein against the Kurdish people or his opposition. It's really he just created a system there that it's very much penetrated in the system, especially the media. So it's not that the Erdogan or his government standing there and there's the media that he just not a friend, adversary. It's that he actually through co-optation by just offering a carrot or dismissal or pressing criminal charges or through other ways, trying to just make them as friends through different ways. So as I said, I don't see hope because I don't know how to fight. Writing, just writing comments or just writing articles or just doing, things that could help for people to open their eyes. I don't think it's helpful because I believe that TV networks are the most important thing. I'm going to do what I'm going to do. I'll try to raise awareness, in the world, also in Turkey, among my family and friends, and also the wider audience. And this is my job, and I believe that if other journalists do what they have to do, and not like get fooled by bigger salaries or afraid of what will happen to them. If they continue doing their job, their journalistic job, I think it's going to be helpful. But of course, I mean, as I said, unless this government goes, I don't see in any foreseeable future that there could be any kind of change. But if we have like a very brave businessman just launching several TV channels, I believe this could be like eye-changing. And also in the current political struggle in Turkey, it's because we have the Gülen movement, which is, I believe, as a scapegoat, and the government just keeps attacking. And people in Turkey actually love this kind of scenario. Whenever you talk constructively in demonstrations, rallies, people don't like it. But whenever you just like launch attacks and assault other people love it. So they just want to see someone being attacked. So in that scenario that's being on the play in Turkey, so it's actually helping the government to consolidate its electoral base, and I believe until this process is over, the government will actually not bleed. But whenever we're over that, whenever we tackle this, and then we can actually focus more on things that actually can hurt the government, which should actually. There are things that if happened in other normal countries that would just bring down the government next day. But it doesn't happen in Turkey because we are obsessed with so many artificial agenda items there. So your question, I don't know how to fight against the government, but I think that the best thing is for me to do my job, and I would urge my colleagues to do the same. And also, have at least several, TV channels that could actually speak out against the wrongdoings of the government. And also, I mean, if this process is over, just seize, the artificial, I believe, attacks on the Gülen movement. I think, we can actually look forward and move forward and build a democracy that this government promised and has made some really important positive strides in the past. So that's I'm maybe cautiously hopeful, but I don't know why I should be.
And you mentioned elections. Elections are so important. And one of the things that I have emblazoned in my mind sometimes is when we inaugurate a new president, you'll see the old president get in a helicopter and just fly away. No bloodshed, no lives lost. And it always strikes me when that happens. We had a president not too long ago who, when the press was bringing accusations towards him, they said, "Oh, this is just politics. There's no truth to that." And it was Richard Nixon back in the Watergate days, and journalists kept digging and digging, and they were allowed to, and they brought more information to light and more information to light. And then you had a separate judiciary where you could go, and there's a rule of law, and if anyone, even if it's the president, broke the law, they would have to be accountable, and there would be some consequence. And so when you have a free press, and you have a rule of law that's in place, everyone is accountable. In that instance, of course, he had to step down from the presidency. But there was no bloodshed in doing that. It was done because of a rule of law. And in most instances, it'll be done with elections. That's why having fair and free elections are so important, and having the privacy of the ballot box. Because when you're there and no one's looking over your shoulder, you can vote the way you think. And that's where the real power can rest, if things are done fairly, without any kind of coercion or illegality. So the fact you mentioned elections, I believe, is so important. And let's hope that those elections can be free and fair.
Hi, Ilyas Ünlü from UMass Lowell. Actually, I have a follow-up question about the relation between the government and the media. So, what do you think about actually my question is for Congressman. What do you think about the support given by the government and its supporters to the media, certain media, constantly making false news, which is justified by the court? So, how can we put
Well,
this?
then news ceases to be called news. it's propaganda at that point. So that's not news. And so, and I think, unfortunately, some people will believe that. But again, it points to the fact that if it's not a free press, you don't need the majority of the press to speak up on an issue if it's free. Just some. And then have that be heard. And then people can go further, make their own views. But when you try and control it, so there's no alternate view, it ceases to be a free press. It's a press in name only. And so it's a non-starter.